what, I agree to all these things that I normally wouldn't agree to. Now they have Kamala, who they say has many deficiencies, but she's a nasty person. The way she treated Mike Pence was horrible. The way she treats people is horrible. But the way she treated Justice Kavanaugh during that hearing, in the history of Congress, nobody's been treated that way.
So that's there right. He is, the matinee idol himself.
Next thing you know,
we all are.
Next thing you know, I'm going to be replaced by Scott Jennings.
Yeah. There's Axelrod in his Lincoln shrine. Abe's spinning in his grave right now thinking about it. I'm in my underground anti-Trump Republican bunkers somewhere west of the Mississippi, and you're in the Adirondacks or somewhere. This is a very,
I'm
very
in Maine.
Nice. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, beautiful.
There you go. I like it.
Mid-coast Maine. I've got
you need a Floyd R. Turbo hat though. That would add the perfect.
I've Murphy, got the. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I've got the Atlantic Ocean. I've got the Atlantic Ocean to my east, and Tucker Carlson somewhere to my west. I don't know where. somewhere in central, in rural Maine, central. That's the part of the state I avoid.
Careful. He's going to drive you into the sea there, so be careful. But Murphy, you said you were in your underground, but thanks to YouTube, at least you're not in your underwear, which is the way we usually find.
You don't know that.
Yeah,
you don't know that.
The first time.
Yeah, don't stand up. Don't stand up.
No. That's we're saving that for the pay-per-view. This is the first time we've worn clothes for one of these things, so we're cleaning up our act. And we also got a little viewer email about the cursing. So fiddlesticks.
What about that clip?
I know.
Can you imagine
so
being
shameless.
Mike Pence? Can you imagine being Mike Pence and sitting there and thinking, dude, you almost got me killed?
Yeah, speaking of double fiddlesticks, Pence must look at that and just think, they were erecting a gallows, but he thinks she was a little rude in the debate. I mean, it's just unbelievable. But I have to admit, I enjoy it now because he's flailing. And
you guys
emotionally,
know
that's satisfying. Go ahead, Johnny.
Sorry, man. I didn't mean to cut you off. We have to watch the crosstalk also, in addition to the cursing. You guys know there's literally only one thing I will be remembered for after I die, which is the Bartlesby. We'll have Bartlesby. Is that the quotes things? What's the famous quote? The quote compendium. Bartlett's, not Bartlesby. Not Bartlesby the Scrivener, but or Bartles and James the recorder.
Yes.
Or Bartles and James the winemaker, the wine cooler maker. That when Bartlett's will remember one thing I ever said in my entire life, which is everything with Trump is projection or confession. And that is projection of the highest caliber. That thing, which is like, man, Kamala Harris so mean. She's so mean to Mike Pence. Oh, she was so mean. Gosh, she's the most cruel, brutal person ever. She's such a thug. Jesus.
Yeah. Well, the other thing about that is you knew he was going to break out nasty, because whenever any woman offends him or stands up to him, he calls her nasty. So you knew that was going to happen. So where do you guys think, here we are after Labor Day, the traditional start of a campaign. This is the weirdest campaign ever. I mean, the most unusual campaign ever. Let's just check in and ask you guys where you think we are.
Well, we got through the scary CNN interview. That was the first big post-convention thing. And there was a lot of kind of, at least in the chattering class, anxiety about it, because everybody watching Kamala Harris now, knowing she's doing pretty well, in my view, is haunted by the memories of old Kamala, the world's worst candidate. And they're just waiting for that to happen and throw everything into despair. I thought it was
but Mike, before we get into the interview, just let's do the 20,000 foot. Where do you think this race is at? And then let's get into that interview.
What am I, an Airbus? Okay. I'll try to do that.
Better that than a Boeing.
I think they're doing okay. They got a little bump because most of their bump was pre-convention. They're running a Ming Vaz strategy of trying to take as little risk as possible. They're doubling down on the Ted Lasso thing. Happy. And she's pretty good at that. Walz is great at it. And they're avoiding anything tricky, anything tough, and they're just trying to flood the zone with happy new future change, which is their core rocket fuel. And I think they're going to try to sustain that all the way. And it's a short enough election. We talk about 60 days of early voting. We're in the 50-day thing now to when you want your campaign to surge. I mean, to peak. Uh, am I nervous? Sure. Watching the great Walenda go across the rope here, but fundamentally, I think they're in good shape as of today, right now.
Heilman, who would win this race if the election were today?
Man, it'd be so close. I mean, look at the polling.
She
Just, we had this ABC News Ipsos poll that just came out. It's the newest national poll, has Harris up by 4, right? That's the most recent one. The polling averages, the New York Times has it at 49.46. Nate Silver has it at 49.2 to 45.7. I think if we look at that's basically, if that held, and the battleground states are all like 1 to somewhere between dead even. I mean, all margin of error, they're all toss-ups, but they're tighter than the national poll. On that basis, if history is our guide, Hillary Clinton had a narrower lead, in that range roughly, and lost, and Donald and Joe Biden had a bigger lead than that, and barely won. I would ask you guys, I think the conventional wisdom is she's got to be up, 3-4 in the battleground states to win, and nationally like 6 to win, just because the electoral college tilt to Republicans. So like today, but she's got all the momentum. She's got all the energy. The Democrats are way more engaged, enthusiastic right now. So the momentum's on her side.
We only have an hour here. You're going to land the plane and take a guess here, will you?
The arc is going her way, which is why I say, and I hate guessing right now, and it doesn't mean anything. I know. Well, that's why I give her the edge.
That's why it's so hard to guess. I guess maybe the enthusiasm and momentum would put her over the edge, but boy, would it be close. It would be, we'd be still waiting for a result 8 days later.
Yeah, which is scary given the environment that Trump has created. But, I think that there's no doubt that she has been on a good trajectory. She was on a good trajectory going into the convention. She came out of it on a good trajectory. I don't think she gain that much from it because there's not that much elasticity in the electorate. But I think she has more work to do. I would say he would, if I had to guess, but it's just a guess.
You asked the question.
This is a coin flip. I think he would win today, but I think that that is today, and what was a landslide for Trump is a coin flip today. And the question is what happens from here. But these battleground states are very tough for Democrats.
Let me ask you the sidebar. Looking at them both going forward to Election Day, who has the best set of tools in front of them to win? The best ingredients, the advantage? I would say her. Whether or not she can exploit them to win.
Yeah.
But yeah.
On issues, enthusiasm, and candidate
and just vibe
skill.
Change.
And candidate
She's
skill.
now the change candidate somehow. Right. I don't think people get up and blame her for all the Biden economic stuff, at least to the degree they blame Biden. That gives her a way to escape the noose.
Well,
that's the big problem, that economic perception.
They've been from the start of her deal hitting middle-class economics hard and I think pretty effectively.
Yeah, I agree.
To sort of blunt that. Listen, I think candidate performance is going to be a big deal here.
Yeah.
And as you point out, he's gone nuts since she became the candidate. He thought he had the race won, and he's like constantly acting out. Now we'll get into that a little bit in a second, but and she's been pretty good. But this is a decathlon; it's not a single event kind of thing. And so she one of the challenges was this interview that she did. So you were starting, Murphy.
I'll be quick. It was not great, not terrible. Better in the second half. Always good to finish better when she got to her vibe Ted Lasso v. Voldemort stuff. But boy, oh boy, defensive in the first thing. And a little note to their otherwise crack advanced team, and I'm sure they know this. There's a thing called a seat cushion in television. So you can actually get higher in the frame and look stronger and not look like you're a little person next to Walz.
Right.
I don't, this is television.
Yes, it had a kind of Gulliver's travel feel to it.
What's going on?
I have to say, just to I don't want to diss your pals at CNN, David, but man, I thought their makeup on both of them looked bad. I don't mean to be too superficial, but it just looked bad. It just didn't look good. And I think I put that on CNN.
First of all, I'm contractually proscribed from answering your question, from responding to you on that particular point. But let me say this. I think the campaign has done remarkably well in many, many respects. But why there wasn't someone, an advanced person there who said, no, we're not going to make her look like she's 2 feet tall and
Right.
and no, we don't like this lighting, and no, we don't like this shot.
Right.
A presidential campaign has folks who should do that. So that was a miss. But let's get to the substance of it.
Too defensive
Right.
at the beginning. That was the problem. She would accept the premise, and she wouldn't do the great purifying move, which is, I've grown, I've learned more, and I've changed that position, I now believe. Instead, it was hemming and hawing. Again, no disaster. So that was the win. But you saw a little the old rickety Kamala there at the beginning, and then she overcame it.
I mean, look, you can't almost talk about this in a vacuum, in the sense that, and I know we're going to talk about Trump and abortion at some point in this podcast, but when she's been given a great gift, if the media calls the thing fair and square, Trump is one of the great flip-floppers of our time, and so I find it a little wanting as an explanation, having listened to someone like Mario Cuomo describe how he went from being pro-life to being, pro-choice on merit. So they would give a really nuanced, excellent answer. The notion of my values haven't changed as being an answer to basically everything, I find it, like, personally a little wanting as an explanation, and not like sort of like, yeah, I get why she's evolved. I thought you could do better work than that, but it's still better than anything Trump ever does on any issue that he flip-flops on. And he flip-flops on everything.
I agree with you guys. I thought she could have done a little better on the sort of a little smoother on the sort of transition on issues and so on. Could have explained the fracking thing a little bit more in terms of geopolitics and American energy capacities and all of that. There are things she could have done. But there's one thing I thought she did really, really well when she got asked the question about Trump's race baiting.
Yeah.
And I thought this was
No, I agree.
really,
This was her best moment. Yeah.
this was
we
really
have the
smart.
sound, right?
Let's take a look at
I was
that.
going to say, yeah.
Said that you happened to turn Black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
Any,
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
that's it? That's it. Okay.
That was smart. And she's been smart throughout on this in not taking the bait and not letting Trump turn her into an identity candidate. And I really, I thought maybe she could have done one more turn of the wheel, and maybe she will in the debate, and say, whose problems is this going to solve? How's this going to move the country forward? I have nothing to say about that. That's Trump. But I thought that was really smart.
Well, it showed her core instinct is to go the Obama way, not the pure identity way, which is a trap. So it made me feel better that she gets that and went there easily, which means she won't fall for that trap later, because that's one of the best ways Trump could get her off track. So yeah, I'll give her that totally.
So here's
No.
here's an interesting question though about this, and acts like, you guys, to Murphy's point a second ago, you guys handled this in a different era.
Yes.
With a great discipline, focus, consistency when it came to Obama and race. She is obviously a candidate who has dual identities, one as a person of color and another as a woman. We are looking at this extraordinary gender gap in this race. If she wins the presidency, she's going to win on the back of women's votes, and on the abortion issue is fueling a lot of that. But she's also got this massive, historic, unprecedented gender gap. Is there a way? Is it by not leaning into her gender at all, is she leaving anything on the table? That's A. And B, is there any way for her to lean into her gender without also having to lean in to the thing that would go much more into Trump's wheelhouse, which is race, which is where he really wants to go here, not just on the gender thing.
I think,
is there a way to do that or not? Or is there those two questions?
There are
are out
ways
there for you guys?
there are ways to do it, but not ways that help her get elected. She gets all that for free. It is built in. Doesn't need to
Yeah, I
spend
agree
a
with
nickel
this.
on it.
Not leaving anything on the
with
table. She's not leaving anything on the table in the gender gap by not
No,
playing
no,
that card more.
no.
Okay.
It's all there. And Trump, of course, is a gift, because basically Trump sees the world in 1958. Grab your apron strings and cook me dinner.
And get to the back of the
people
bus.
smell that on him. Yeah, you're right, exactly. So no, she's got to put her bandwidth into her problem. Is she part of the Biden economic disaster? That's
Well,
Trump's
look,
one rock.
And I also think, and this was our philosophy in 2008, Yes, Mike's absolutely right. You get all that for free. Everybody who cares about her being a woman can see that she's a woman. You don't have to draw a line under that. I think actually the energy behind the abortion rights movement helps that along, and she's obviously a strong advocate on that. But you're trying to draw as large a circle as you can and invite as many people into it as possible, and you don't want to limit yourself in any way. She's running for president of the United States. She's not running to be the first woman president. She's not running to be the first black woman president, the first Indian woman. I mean, she's running for president, and I think she's carried that very, very well. And she's looked and sounded like a president, which I think is so important. So
basically, strike fight song from the playlist from the campaign.
yes, I don't think
I
this
think
is
it was on
is
Hillary's
not-
playlist.
Yeah,
We should
yeah,
strike
no,
from
no,
the
we're
list.
doing,
this
we're
is-
doing fine without it.
This is not a race that has as its principal mission to shatter the glass ceiling. This is a race to move the country forward, and that's what she's articulating. So on this abortion issue, I mean, you're absolutely right, John. It's head spinning to think about Trump, Harris being attacked for flip-flopping when you've got Trump who has taken, I mean, there used to be he's not pro-choice or anti-choice, he's multiple choice, but he's taken this to a whole new dimension. And I want to play back to back. There's this
Jesse Jackson?
Florida initiative to restore abortion rights in the state where they've passed a 6-week abortion ban. And he got asked about it. And he's, wants to run from this, having toppled Roe, he wants to run from it like a scalded dog. And so when he got asked the question, here's how he reacted on the question of how he would vote.
You
Well,
overturn,
everyone does.
you
I think
overturn
everyone
Roe,
does, yeah.
and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6-week is too short. It has to be more time. And so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
Okay, so that's what he said.
Hamida.
I think that's what he said on Wednesday. I'm not sure the sequence, but 24 hours later, here's what he had to say.
Voting yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida.
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation that where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
There
All right,
you go.
John,
It
you
all
wanna- you
makes
wanna
perfect sense. Yeah.
You want to clean that up, Heilman?
Well, I mean, first of all, one of Trump's most disgusting and gratuitous lies is this lie about the fact that there's any state in the country that allows babies to be born to be executed after birth. I mean, it makes me furious that he somehow still manages to keep saying that without paying any price for it. But whatever. What happened in between those two clips, which is the key element here, is that Trump has been trying to get out of the mousetrap he created for himself by getting Roe v. Wade overturned. He knows this issue is toxic for him and for the Republican Party. He said so in 2022. He is trying to wiggle out of it, and then he got slapped by people at his base. The pro-life part of the anti-abortion part of the Republican coalition stood up and said, smacked him publicly, and he then just ran away, as you said, like a scalded dog. I think was your phrase, scalded dog. And he now is back and saying a thing that makes no sense whatsoever, which is it should be longer than 6 weeks, but I'm going to vote for an amendment or a vote against an amendment that would make it longer than 6 weeks. I'm going to effectively support the 6-week abortion ban. He makes no sense whatsoever, but he's just wrapped around this axle as tight as anybody could ever be wrapped around it. I don't see a way out for him.
Yeah, no, he's dove into a wood chipper. But let's back up a little, because there was a plan. the original plan was, and there was some of this in the Senate. Well, basically, Trump looked at that and said, why don't I just say send it to the states? So let the people decide. Then I don't have to have a position. Other Republicans have hit that iceberg in the past, too. So they tried that for a while. And then people said, well, you vote in Florida, and there's a Florida one. And meanwhile, and I was pitching this months ago, I like this idea. The Dems are raising so much money, they can afford to open a little side front in Florida just to draw in Republican money and trouble and drive Trump crazy because he lives there. So they're doing, they've got that great hammer, the thing on the ballot. So finally we wind around. He can't dodge the question anymore. How are you going to vote in Florida? And his own pro-choice instincts kicked in. And he said, well, I don't know, a little too much. Then there's a panic inside the Trump campaign. And they've already steamrolled the traditional Republican Christian conservatives on the platform at the convention. So, internally there's some screaming phone calls. So they try to get him to wiggle out of it by being back. And so now he's just flailing on the hook, which only makes it bigger in the campaign. So I agree. I think, he is feeding an issue that's killing him. And it's good for her. She doesn't even have to do a lot. Now, what he tried to do, just to wrap this up, because I know I'm babbling on here, he tried to do the old Republican playbook, which used to work pretty well, which is, look, the real issue in this campaign is the Democrats want taxpayer-funded abortion, no parental consent, late-term abortions, all the stuff that gets you 65, 70% on your side in a poll. And you move it to the edge issues where you can go on offense. But he's just not adroit enough for that. And we know in his heart he doesn't believe any of this stuff.
Yeah,
he's totally pro-choice.
I think that the whole Dobbs thing has shifted this thing to where that's not all that effective.
Right. Well, it's made it relevant.
That is the refuge for most of the Republicans now.
Whenever you leave the house, you go through the things that you need. You think, I need my phone, I need my wallet, I need my keys, I need to have my stuff together. And the other thing, if you have any hair, you look in the mirror, you're like, how does my hair look?
Yeah, and I say, what happened to it? Where is it?
Right, exactly.
I've got my keys, I got my wallet, where's my hair? But if you're experiencing hair loss, you may not be so confident when you step outside your door. It's time to get that confidence back and restore your hair with Hims.
Hims is a product that provides access to a range of hair loss treatments that work, all of them from the comfort of your couch. And my couch is pretty comfortable. They make Hims makes treating hair loss simple because I can't go out because I don't have any hair. So the couch is important in my life. Hims makes treating hair loss simple with doctor-trusted treatment options and clinically proven ingredients like finasteride and minoxidil that can regrow hair in as little as 3 to 6 months. You can get it in a chewable oral spray. You get a serum treatment. You can find whatever works best for you.
The process is simple and 100% online. Just answer a few questions. That's good, right? A few questions and a medical provider will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your treatment is sent directly to your door.
Hims has hundreds of thousands, not tens, not hundreds, not thousands, but hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers. So if you feel like you're losing a part of yourself as your hair goes down the drain, get Hims and get your mojo back.
So start your free online visit today at hims.com/hacks. That's HIMS.com/hacks for your personalized hair loss treatment options. hims.com/hacks.
Results vary based on studies of topical and oral minoxidil. Prescription products require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information.
We should also point out, in addition to the outrageous lie about execution of babies, that abortion in the 9th month is exceptionally rare. And, Trump says, I want exceptions. I don't know whether Life of the Mother is the one. He generally recites it. I mean, when there is an abortion in the 9th month, it's usually for a very profound medical reason. Nobody carries a child to the 8th month and says, I want to, I
changed my mind.
I'm not into it.
Yeah, I don't want to build that crib.
Yeah, exactly. Usually the crib is built and the room is decorated, and it's a tragedy. So none of that is true. The fact of the matter is that they are the dogs that caught the car, and now the car is backing up and rolling over them on this issue.
just quickly, and then John Sawyer's plug a podcast, because there's tension in the Christian conservative or social conservative world. Christianity Today is a good podcast called The Bulletin, and I pop up on it once in a while, mostly to do a sacred and profane thing, and you can guess what side of that I'm on.
Yeah.
But it's really thoughtful and smart. And I was on a week or two ago, I think it was last week, and some of this tension was debated. It's a good place to listen to a thoughtful discussion about this stuff.
Yeah.
Because there are people of good faith in that movement, and they're
Sure.
troubled by Trump.
Well, let me say one last thing about this, which is, the numbers are really staggering, right? The gender gap is historic, and the numbers are now among certain subsets of female voters. This is now the most important issue over the economy, which is not a normal thing in a presidential election year. The economy almost always trumps everything else across basically all subsets of voters. Here's the two tricky things about it. One is the thing you guys have both mentioned, and I know you guys are super familiar with this, but like essentially among under 45-year-old Republican women, 50% are now pro-choice, right? What keeps them from this being the salient issue? One thing is the salient issue they vote on. One thing is they don't believe Trump is actually pro-life. And they're probably right about that. They look at him and go, this guy's not really, he's not going to pass the national abortion ban because he's not really on that side. In the focus groups, people are constantly saying they think Trump has paid for abortions. That comes up all the time in the campaign focus groups. That's one thing. The second thing is 5 out of 7 of the battleground states have Democratic governors, which gives a lot of voters who might be really worried about this, the kind of who are Trump curious or Trump pro-Trump, they go, Josh Shapiro's never going to let there be an abortion ban in Pennsylvania. Or, Gretchen Whitmer's never going to let that happen in Michigan. Obviously, she's already taken steps. Or Wisconsin, whatever. Those are just the two, the kind of countervailing things that Democrats have to overcome if they really want this to be the killer issue, because those are like little bumps in the road that kind of keep it from being the most salient issue.
Well, that's why there's a focus on passing a national abortion standard to keep states like Florida from doing what it's doing. And that's something that Trump already has disavowed. His thing is let the states do whatever the states want to do. But the other element of this particular sequence of events is it does underscore, for the guy who's supposed to be the strong man, he got healed like a chihuahua on this issue.
Yeah, being multiple choice is not a signature of strength.
Totally.
But you're onto something, Johnny. By the way, my favorite crosstab in all this is the most pro-choice group in America is young men.
Yeah.
By the way, I think you guys can put that together.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is not the laser sword issue that wins everything, because people do see those other things. And so if I'm all for the Harris campaign mentioning it every day, because it brings money and energy, which are very useful in the campaign.
They also they just launched a bus tour, not with the candidate, but with Amy Klobuchar and a bunch of other people. Or there's going to make 50 stops on this issue. So they're definitely going to keep
Florida,
it in play.
more of that dumpster fire they're trying to set there in his backyard. But if you are that voter in Michigan or Wisconsin or Arizona, whatever swing state you want to focus on, who is pro-choice, and it's female and you're 42, but you're also in the great American middle class feeling an economic squeeze, and you don't think she'll fix that, you're not going to get her, I don't think, or you're not going to get enough of them. You're not going to have a big enough margin. Abortion alone won't do it for you. That's why middle class economics is everything in this race, along with change. And abortion policy is a tool of arguing for change. He is in 1958, Scarlet Letter. He doesn't get it. Women don't have an opinion. Men tell them what to do. It fuels that larger theme, which is the gold.
I got to say, though, to go back to this gender gap issue and the related ancillary issue, which is the IVF thing. I mean, Trump's thing on IVF last week is one of the most batshit things I've ever heard in my life, from the standpoint of a Republican nominee for president standing up and saying, we are going to mandate that we're going to either pay by the government's either going to pay for, or we're going to mandate the insurance companies pay for IVF. One of the most, of commonly used medical procedures, like one of the most expensive things going out there.
No, exactly. He went socialist for a day. Now it's a handout for vote. It just shows how transactionally corrupt he is. Well, I'll give Lindsey Graham, somebody I criticize a lot, a little bit of credit for blowing the conservative. Well, wait a minute. What are you doing? You're gonna
Every
bankrupt
Republican in the
the
Senate just had a giant theatrical eye roll as soon as he said
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah,
that's going to
exactly.
pass
Well,
Congress.
I mean, one of
break.
their objections to the Affordable Care Act was that it did mandate sort of basic services, preventative care and basic services. So, but listen, it just underscores the fact that Trump has no ideology. He has the ideology of Trump, which is whatever advances him at any given moment. And this gets back to the fundamental question, which is, can he drive a message in the campaign? You mentioned, Murphy, these economic issues. He's being implored by his team to stick to them and the immigration issue. He can't stay on a message.
Yeah, his team is irrelevant. Nobody controls them. There was all this, stuff about how great they're doing. They were doing great when he was cruising ahead in a primary. The minute Biden stepped down and put the tungsten dart into Trump's political future, to praise Biden for that, now he's running wild. And by the way, I want to start a hacks on tap pool here. Which Trump general is going to be the first to leave to save their own skin?
It's
I think
amazing
Lasavita might be out of there any minute on his own accord.
It's amazing we made it to Labor Day without anybody being fired.
Right.
Trump always fires someone over the summer.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the fact that Corey Lewandowski is back, the kind of let Trump be Trump crowd, is that's exactly the wrong message. I mean, Trump won in a way in 2016 because they managed to not let Trump be Trump in the final months of that campaign, or the final 6 weeks of that campaign. He was pretty disciplined. They don't need Trump to be Trump. They need Trump to stick to a message, and he is panicked. It's very
they need Trump
clear
to be
he's
not
panicked.
Trump, and Kamala's better at being not Trump than Trump.
That's what the IVF thing says to me more than anything. It just shows panic. It's like he's free. He's seeing these numbers. He's seeing this gender gap. He's seeing these issues and her ability to marshal them, Harris's. And he looks to me like he's the combination of his mental decline, which I think is actually significant, and his state of like political panic, which is well-founded, is creating this kind of indiscriminate flailing. And to David's point, I've seen no evidence suggest there's any world where Trump can pull it together. Maybe you will.
Hey, let's talk, John, you had raised, before we started today, you had raised the issue of this flap at Arlington.
Yep.
He set up an event. He says, at the request of the Gold Star families of people who of the servicemen and women who lost their lives in Afghanistan at Abbey's Gate, in that hasty withdrawal from Afghanistan. And it was quickly turned into a political ad by the campaign, or a video. And there was a dust up there with personnel from Arlington who said, you can't shoot political ads by these grave sites.
Right.
It struck me that this was supposed to be a clean hit on Harris and Biden on Afghanistan that turned into a fiasco.
Totally. Well, just actually, when I saw this ad that they ran with the Gold Star families, if you take it, if the campaign hadn't done what it did at Arlington, just play this just so we can get a sense of it. Because I think, well, I want to hear what you guys think about it. But to me, it's not unmoving to listen to these Gold Star families.
Our kids were murdered because of your administration.
You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. And no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service.
You have 13 families who have been waiting over 3 years to so much as get a phone call, to so much as hear our kids' names said aloud.
You failed for 3 years and 8 months to acknowledge our kids. Where were you and Joe Biden on August 26, 2024? Nowhere near Arlington Cemetery. You couldn't be bothered to be with us or even say our kids' names, just as you had done for the last 3 years.
There's a lot of things to say about whether you can really make the Afghanistan withdrawal stick to Harris when it's but there's a lot of questions about that. But there's also the fact that the Gold Star families have a sacred place in American life. When you hear them saying they haven't been called. They're raising this issue of why no one, Biden or Harris, has called them over 3 years. That's a potentially effective thing. But then they go to Arlington and just make a giant, I think we're supposed to say now, Fuster Cluck here instead of the other word, so to be sensitive to our. But you know what I'm saying? It's like they have this thing teed up to what I watch that and I go, okay, like it's hard to make that stick to her, but that's not an ineffective piece of political communication. Yeah.
But the thing that, I mean, it is powerful, and it is shades of the Swift Boat Veterans for Truth that La Savita ran so skillfully in 2024 to blasphemy John Kerry, who was a war hero, and it had some effect. But you're dealing in a guy with, I mean, if I'm on the Harris side, I mean, again, as with the flip-flops, this guy has not exactly been,
of course,
a champion of the military. He has not been a champion of those who've lost their lives in war. He's demeaned them. He demeaned John McCain for being a prisoner of war. There are a lot, they're not on, they're not a super solid ground here. But the main point is the main point, which is they turned what was supposed to be a solid hit into a fiasco.
And that's the bonus for Harris. They're going to keep doing that because they can't change Trump.
Right.
And that ad also, and you made this point, I just want to reinforce it, Johnny. It is hard to hurt her with ricochets. They got a great hit at Biden there. But the people really think, and, this was a perceived weakness of her, that she was calling any shots in the White House, or she was there doing National Cub Scout Day, the first year and cutting ribbons. So it's hard to make her the evil mastermind. It's a good hit and it damages her, but boy, most of the thrust has to kind of go to him and then get to her, and that's tricky.
So
go ahead.
It just raises a larger question, right? Because the other thing that if we talked about before about like what could stop her momentum, right? There are three possible things. One is she fucks up. The second, she screws up. The second is that Trump gets disciplined, and the third is some external events intrude on the campaign in a way that either causes her to screw up or that changes the dynamics. The Gold Star family thing is a historic thing. The death of the Israeli hostages is a current event in that's a classic example in that third category of external events, exogenous realities. They have this video of her saying, we told the Israelis not to go to Rafah. There would be a disaster. Don't go to Rafah. And of course, then the hostages get killed in Rafah. And this is what the Trump people are now leaning into, which is she's the co-author of the disastrous, not sufficiently pro-Israel policy. I ask you guys this question kind of in a broader sense. That does anything, we know that they're going to go after her on trying to tie her to Biden's economy or the perceptions of Biden's economy. Is there anything in the foreign policy realm, Murphy, to your point, that can stick to her? Or is she, other than immigration, which is not really a foreign policy thing, or is it she's just not ever going to have to own those because Biden is seen as the architect
I
of
think
all that
she has a
policy?
very long leash on this stuff. I do think it's typical Trump, all tactics, desperate clinging. So, it's her fault. Well, actually, they're in the Netanyahu business. Trump is.
Right.
Now, they've had their personal conflicts, but fundamentally, he's been doing the tough guy stuff. And what's happening now in Israel, shaking their politics to the foundation, is about Bibi putting the interest of holding his coalition and power together, as you guys know, over the hostages. And Bibi's kind of manufactured an issue about the control of the Egyptian border for smuggling arms when all the IDF generals and everybody said, we can take that thing anytime we want, get the hostages back. We can go back on next Tuesday. So I think there's more radiation spilling over both Bibi connection with the Republicans, and Trump's strongman shtick is not unlike Bibi's strongman shtick. And I think strongmen who get kids killed because of their own personal greed, I think there's more harmonic vibration there heading Trump's way than hers.
Hey everyone, it's John Heilman here, and let's face it, this is the thing I have some experience with. After a night with drinks, cocktails, beer, whatever, I just don't bounce back the next day like I used to when I was a younger man and made of steel. Now I have to make a choice. I can either have a great night out with a bunch of drinks, several drinks, a few drinks, or I can have a great next day. That was the choice I faced until I found pre-alcohol. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by scientists who hold PhDs. That's a big degree, and they designed it to tackle rough mornings after a long night of drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in your gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, as people sometimes think, that's to blame when you have a rough next morning, next day. Pre-alcohol, however, from ZBiotics, produces an enzyme that breaks this byproduct down. So just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Then remember to drink responsibly, always. And if you do both those things, you will feel your best tomorrow. Every time I have a pre-alcohol before drinks, I notice a difference the next day. Even after a night out, I can confidently plan on being able to do whatever I need to do. Shoot some hoops, tape hacks on tap, have a nice lunch, chat with my friends, do all the stuff that makes my life worth living without any worry. Now, I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and I wondered what it was actually like. Now that I've tried it, I gotta say, I normally don't believe the hype. In this case, I believe the hype. And with their GMO technology, ZBiotics will release different products that help address toxic byproducts of modern living in the gut. So, everybody, go to zbiotics.com. That's ZBIOTICS.com/hacks to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the HACKS code at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason whatsoever, ZBiotics will refund your dough, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/hacks and use the code HACKS at checkout for a whopping 15% off.
To the broader point, I think I said this on TV because, my buddy Scott Jennings was trying to make the point that, she was there, she was in the room and so on. Nobody believes the vice presidents make these decisions. Nobody believes that. And I mean, as I said to him, nobody talks about the Pence years. Okay. Nobody thinks vice presidents are basically the person who stands in the background behind the president. So I think it's a very hard case to make, but it leads me to a question for you guys, which is, she was out yesterday on Labor Day campaigning with Joe Biden. It was at a union event in Pittsburgh. Biden has a constituency with Labor, particularly in that area. I think it was at the electrical workers, the trade unions. But if you're sitting in their strategic hub, how much do you want her appearing with Biden?
You don't, but you have to do minimum sufficient, or you create a big where's, and then you put Biden back in the story that way. And I thought they were smart to put 4 electrical worker bosses between the two of them to constantly deny the video a strong 2-shot. I mean, they worked the crowd together, but they've got to do.
I thought you meant to provide electricity.
Well, but no, I'm pro IBW. But bottom line is they're going to check this box a couple times, and that's it. Right. And I don't think you're going to see it in October.
I mean, Labor Day was an obvious day to do it, but
right.
The effort to keep them slightly separate, it might have been confounded slightly by Biden referring to how he and her were going to continue to work on whatever.
I think we have that. We should let's take a look at that.
We're going to let that son of a gun do that again? Folks, we made a lot of progress, and Kamala and I are going to build on that progress, and she's going to build on it. I'll be on the sidelines, but I'll do everything I can to help.
Who got very excited watching that was Donald Trump. Oh, Joe Biden is back. I get to run against Biden again. Oh.
Yeah.
For a second, Biden and Trump were living in the same deluded fantasy world there where they thought they were still running against each other.
So we're going to talk about the debate next week, but
we're doing a double. We're doing the old club sandwich. We're going to do a pre and post debate show. So we're going to obsess over it. This is huge. This debate is critical because she is still an unbaked cake and Trump is a cornered animal. But this is going to be a critical, big, high stakes debate.
But David, to go back to the Biden thing that you asked, which is, she's been, she didn't take much to avoid stumbling into the artful trap that Dana Bash said for her when he said, "Are you saying you would support Bidenomics?" And she's like, "Well, I will say that I support the elements of our economic program that worked. I will not use that word, Dana."
Well,
there
that
is
was
a
in the
question-
bubble box. She didn't exactly say that, but go ahead.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like
No, I know what you're saying.
There was a little bit of a trap set for her there to try to get her to say the wrong thing. But she has basically been very loyal to him, right? And
yes,
there are
which I
people
actually thought in that interview, by the way, guys, I thought one of the finest moments for her in that interview was toward the end when she gave a full-throated sort of defense of Biden and tribute to Biden in a way that I thought was really appropriate about how history will remember him. And to me, she came across as loyal. She came across as someone with character. And I wouldn't have predicted that. I'm not sure I would have predicted that answer would have played the way it did, but she clearly meant it. She felt it, even as she was saying, "I'm looking forward. I have my own, idea about where we're going to go."
So I think there's an argument that many voters like the notion of loyalty, even at some personal or political cost.
Especially
I will ask Mr. Murphy, however, if part of what you're trying to do, as I'm speaking up to a classic hack here, if what you're trying to do is create a little bit of space between you and some of the things about the perception of Biden's economic record that are maybe one of the couple of things that might cost you the election. Is she doing enough to do that, to be both loyal to him, but also make that space on the economic issue and on immigration?
Not yet, but they're going in the right direction with their plan forward stuff. Now they stumbled. They got into this price control idiocy for a day or two, and then they stuffed that back in the dumb Marxist can. But I think the debate is when she can talk about her forward-looking plan for the middle class. New president, some new ideas. Not a hard argument to make, and I think there's more work to do. But they're showing me they understand this and they're working on it. So I think I'm optimistic. But that's
let me just say
move that needle and stay on his right on grown-up foreign policy and keep the lasso vibe thing going. That's how I think they win.
Yeah, let me just say, I've been thinking a lot about the presidential debates, and we all get really invested in the issues, and I think the narrative is very important. Like, what are you about? Where do you want to lead the country? That's important. But when you think back to the Kennedy-Nixon debate, which was the first big presidential debate, and almost all the debates subsequent, the things that people remember are rarely, big policy treatises. They are who commanded the stage. They do remember lines that suggest who commanded the stage in the moment. I think it's important who commands this stage. And the question is, how do you do that with Donald Trump? And I think the answer is you are unbothered by him. You're talking to the American people. Yes, you're going to have your exchanges with him, but the vibe you want to send is enough of this.
Right. Totally
enough
change
of
the channel we've lived in. And that's what I mean about, I'm not pitching her to do an 18-point plan and bring out a flow chart and a slide rule.
Yeah.
I want her to look at the camera and say, beyond all the noise you're hearing, what does this mean for you and your family? Let me tell you what I'm going to think about every day when I walk into the Oval. What can I do? And I have some new ideas. Ideas like your parents ought not to go into bankruptcy to afford their diabetes medicine. Bing, bing, bing. Connect to the camera and talk to the folks at home. Break the wall, rise above the antics. So I think we're saying the same thing.
We are.
Because then you get the adult versus the toddler. And the toddler is exhausting.
Yeah.
I love it when Axe and Murphy both are on the same page. I have a question I want to ask before. I know we're gonna run out of time soon. So I want to ask one last question. It goes back to the very top of the podcast. But before I do that, I'll just say, in the realm of flip-flopping, one of my favorite quotes in the history of politics is what Jesse Jackson said about Bill Clinton. When he comes to a fork in the road, he takes the fork. I just think it's one of the greatest things ever. It's a comment. It works on so many levels. But here's my
rip
question.
Off from Yogi Berra, but yes.
When we go back to the top, when we talked about the state of the race, David,
yes,
in Milwaukee, at one of your Axe and Amy briefings, you had Tony Fabrizio.
IOP and Cook, yeah.
Yes, IOP and Cook political report. And Tony Fabrizio, Donald Trump's pollster, a serious guy, was at the peak of their brio about and kind of delusional hubris about, well, we stopped counting our number of ways to 270 electoral votes when we get to 25 or something. But he did say, here's the easiest way. The easiest way is we win Georgia and Pennsylvania.
Right.
When we don't have to win anything else.
Right.
And if you look at where they're spending money in Georgia and Pennsylvania.
Right.
I understand why Georgia is hard. Why Georgia is going to be Georgia Republican state. That's why it's going to be hard for Democrats to win. Kamala Harris could win.
She's put it in play though.
But I understand.
You know, she could that you got a 30% African-American population in that state. She can win, but it's certainly hard.
Right. So I'm not saying, all I'm saying is I understand why Georgia is hard to win for a Democrat.
Him crapping all over the governor there helps as well.
But my question to the two of you is, why is it that every Democratic strategist I talk to who is good at this, all of them, including on their campaign, says, man, Pennsylvania is tough. Pennsylvania is going to be tough. You get this refrain over and over again. I'm not totally ignorant here, but I want to get your guys' view. Why is Pennsylvania so much harder than Wisconsin and Michigan? Why is that so much harder for Kamala Harris to win?
It goes to Carville's, ancient but still wise reference to Pennsylvania is Pittsburgh and Philadelphia with Alabama stuck between them. I mean, it's a tough state. The middle of the state is tough for Democrats generally. She's not culturally akin. Biden was more culturally akin to those voters. So it's, it is a challenge. It's not an insuperable challenge, but is a challenge. And if she doesn't win it, then she not only has to win Georgia, but she has to win another state. And so, it is a big wound. If this goes back, I don't want to reopen the Walz-Shapiro issue on VP, but this is why, a lot of folks, and I may have been one of them, thought Shapiro would have been a smart play. It won't matter if she wins, then it'll seem like she, made the right play.
I think she can win it. I think this is somewhat overrated. And I think if she gets the campaign together that works in Michigan and Wisconsin, she can win there too. And I think she's in the hunt in Georgia. It's tougher, but demographically, if she can electrify the African-American vote and put it together with suburbs, there's a definite, she's put it back in play. It's a margin of error now. And finally, something good is happening for the Democrats in Nevada. I'm not sure what it is. The Senate race is totally breaking D. Mm-hmm. That is another state where voters of color are a big deal, and Biden was struggling. She's not. So, we will see. I've even seen, margin of error stuff in Arizona where the Senate race is also breaking the right way. So, I agree that none of the swing states are difficult, but they cross-pollinate.
No, easy, you mean?
Yeah, easy, excuse me. But they cross-pollinate.
That's the opposite of difficult.
So, and by the way, if any of them are listening, go to American EV jobs.
Oh my gosh.
I can't resist. It is in Georgia. It's a huge issue that nobody's using to their advantage. $30 billion in new plants, and it's a secret. Why the campaign is not jumping on that, I do not get.
Talk about a guy who's electric. It's Mike Murphy. Heilman, you're new to the whole ad business on Hacks on Tap, but
yeah.
So you don't know this, and I'm going to tell you the story because we're doing Helix mattresses. I got one, and it's been the best mattress I ever had. So you ought to get in on this action, and so should all our listeners, because Helix knows there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home, and that's why they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress.
Now, Axe, let me ask you this question. There's different kinds of sleepers. Everyone's unique.
Yes.
People sleep on their side, on their back, on their stomach, on their head.
Yes.
How do you sleep, by the way?
Well, badly, but better on my Helix mattress. But I'm a side. I'm a restless sleeper. I sleep mostly on my side, and I took their little test, which takes very little time, and they sent me a mattress that was tailored to my needs. Models with memory foam layers to provide optimal pressure relief if you sleep on your side. That's me. Models with a more responsive foam to cradle your body for essential support on this in stomach and back sleeping positions. That might be you, Heilman. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I sleep in all different positions. Actually, I haven't had a decent night's sleep since 1978. But
Yes.
here's the thing that appeals to me about Helix, and you can tell me whether this is true. It's they say that your spine, if your spine needs some extra TLC, as you know, I'm freakishly tall, and like all freakishly tall people, my spine definitely needs some extra TLC.
Yes, yeah.
Is it right what they say about the hybrid design that wraps
totally.
the steel coils and the base with the premium foam layers that helps people with spinal issues?
I'm telling you, man, I'm here to testify. It is true. And they also have an enhanced cooling feature to keep you from overheating at night, which is good for me. Right now, Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders and get this, 2 free pillows for our listeners. So what do they do, Heilman?
You know what they say? It's as cool as the other side of the Helix pillow. If you want to get this thing, you go to helixsleep.com/hacks. That's HACKS. That's helixsleep.com/hacks. This is their best offer yet. And I'm going to get in on it. And it's not going to last long.
With Helix, better sleep starts now.
It's listener mailbag.
All right. If you have a question for the hacks, all you got to do is email us at hacksontap@gmail.com, hacksontap@gmail.com. You can send us a voice memo so we can hear your dulcet tones. Just make it short. We're the windbag bloviators around here. And finally, you can do it by voicemail in the back of some Chicago off-track betting parlor / turnout center. We have set up a number I can't remember, but you can leave a 20, 25-second question right there. Just use your name, too. Here's the number. 773-389-4471. I'll repeat it because who can remember that? 773-389-4471.
Since this guy name checks you, Heilman, we're going to take the first from Josh, and it's a voicemail.
Hey there, Hacks. This is Josh from Iowa. I actually ran into Mr. Heilman in the Chicago airport coming back from the convention. My question this week is, has Kamala Harris found her stride because of the political environment we find ourselves in 2024 instead of 2020, where she can be herself and just find that stride?
Governor Shapiro, it was good to run into the airport that day. And kidding. I remember running into Josh at the airport. He was a very nice gentleman. Look, I think there are two things to say about this. One is, there was pre-2020 Kamala Harris, and everybody in the world who saw her thought she was potentially a president of the United States and thought she had a great future ahead of her. And she was not, contrary to some of Mike's comments earlier about her candidate skills, she was a strong California candidate. She was strong I thought as a United States senator. The campaign was a bad environment for her because basically every Democrat except for Joe Biden and Michael Bennet bent over backwards to try to appease a progressive wing that they thought was going to dominate the primary. They didn't. They were wrong. That was a huge mistake. And I think that sent her on a downward spiral that she then got into the vice president's office, which is a crappy job, better than a bucket of warm piss. And then she lost her way. And, it's that Haley Barbour thing of good gets better and bad gets worse. It's like how life is. When you're on a roll, you get better, you get more confident, you improve. She got on the downward spiral. And then Dobbs came along and I think saved her in a sense. Joe Biden having to hand over that issue to her. If you watched her performing for the last year, basically from Dobbs forward on that issue, she was quietly refinding her footing and getting better and better.
Herself.
And the combination of her finding her feet again, she was in exactly the right position to blossom in some ways when this moment presented itself. So I think it's a combination of the moment and also the candidate who was on a trajectory that you guys have seen a lot of candidates go on, where they had a lot of promise and a lot of hope. They got smacked down and then they bottomed out and bounced back. It happened to Bill Clinton. It's happened to other people in our careers.
Yeah. Well, in fact, most of the candidates who won have had suffered losses. Barack Obama lost a House primary by 30 points. Bill Clinton lost a couple of races for the House and reelection for governor and
Nixon.
Joe Biden. Yeah,
Well,
I mean, it's like it's very common.
Yeah,
But here's
it's part
the
of
thing.
the
Here's
graduate school politics. You lose to learn.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I will say this. It's very, there has to be a high level of authenticity about your message and your candidacy when you run for president. It's just too hard. I said years ago, it's an MRI for the soul. If you're faking it, you generally get found out. And she wasn't, as you point out, John, who she actually is in the 2019 campaign. She's a center-left Democrat. She was a middle-of-the-road prosecutor who antagonized the left in some instances. She just wasn't who she ran as, and she therefore seemed disconnected from the words she was speaking and the position she was taking, and people sensed that, and she failed. This time she seems very organically linked to her message, and it's very much built on who she is, and she's not running away from her bio. And Murphy, you know something about this because you worked for Mitt Romney, but not in 2012. When he ran in 2012, he got the advice to run away from his bio, from his governorship, because he did the healthcare bill, from his business and from his faith, and basically you took away so much of who he was. You can't win like that.
Oh, there was a lot left, as we all know now. No, I could go on for hours about that. It's right. And I fundamentally agree, though I want to push back on my pal Heilman here. On her candidate skills are getting better. And I think she's now surfing a wonderful wave she did not create, but she is using it well because it's a vibe campaign, so she doesn't have to really talk about ideology, which has been good for her. But when she ran for California Attorney General, she was not a good candidate. She almost lost to a Republican in California. She only won by about 90,000 votes out of, I think, almost 8.5 million. So that's the ghost that's haunting the Harris machine. Will the bad candidate in the clutch of debate or something pop up? And so far, other than a couple of stumbles in that interview, which were not material, it hasn't. So people change. It could be that, she improved. She never really had a contested race after that 2010. In California, the way you run a good campaign is win the Democratic primary, and then you win it for free.
Right.
But
Murphy,
anyway, we will see.
A guy named Unnamed.
Oh yes,
sent in a voicemail. Has a vaguely Russian accent. I don't know why, but anyway, let's take a listen to this.
Hello there, hacks. Who will be the front runners for the Republican presidential nomination in 2028? I'm wondering if MAGA can survive another Trump loss and whether the traditional GOP can rebuild itself. And might your answers depend on the margin of victory for Harris Walz? Thanks. I love the show. Keep on hacking. Bye-bye.
So he's already got Harrison Walz elected here, but
that
go ahead,
might have
Murphy.
been Governor Walz. I thought his voice sounded a little familiar. We'll ask him to come back on with some gutter advice. So look, who knows? It's going to be. I look at it like it's going to be the Chinese Civil War. There's going to be a lot of warlords running around in the wreckage of another loss. In the beginning, the media will say Trump's still in charge, but no, he'll be a two-time loser. And there will be some son of MAGA, somebody trying to grab that. I think, as usual, look to the governors because they're outside Washington. And there are a whole bunch. Obviously, you have kind of the perennials. DeSantis will try again. Haley will probably shamelessly try again. Of course, in Florida, you got Rubio.
How about Kemp?
Well, I was about to go there. You're stepping on my big finish.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Brian Kemp of Georgia is a contender. Near South Carolina, which counts. A very adroit politician, conservative, hard to get at in a primary. Now, the rumor is he's very focused on running for the Senate in 2 years. Not that interested in presidential stuff, but on paper, not a super fundraiser either. But boy, oh boy, the talent is there, I think, to do well. I would keep an eye on Sarah Huckabee Sanders, too.
What about Glenn Youngkin? What about Youngkin?
Youngkin, yeah. A little, part of it is what does MAGA 3.0 look like? The new populism post-Trump. Who will that be? Who are new stars that could be created as opponents to a Harris thing, maybe out of the federal side? Does a Dan Crenshaw in the House start to superstar in that role? It's pretty wide open, I think. The question will be the factions. There'll be the chamber business world trying to come back. The socials will say, okay, we had this faker Trump who was good on some policy. Let's go with the real thing. And people will chase that. Ted Cruz will pop up through the floorboards. So it'll be a mixture of old and new, with nobody standing like a colossus, at least from what I can see now, atop the primary. And then we're going to have a real Donnybrook, which we have to defend, to rebuild some sort of grown-up right of center party. I'm looking forward to it.
I think the party is so debauched and so corrupted and hollowed out that it's going to take more than one cycle. I think there is a rebuilding thing that will happen, and probably something like that resembles more of old-fashioned republicanism will come back. But I don't think it's 4 years off. I think it's like that's a couple cycles off.
But the first big defining
the obvious point here is that it depends on who wins this election.
Of course.
If Harris wins and you have 2 terms of a Democratic administration, there's a opportunity
we don't know about
for
2
Republicans.
terms. Let's see.
If I'm what I'm saying is, if she wins,
you're counting
there'll have
Biden.
been 2 consecutive Democratic presidencies.
Right.
She would have to scramble to win re-election. If she goes 3 terms, that's more vulnerability, history suggests. But if Trump wins, the question is, is Vance the crown prince, as they seem to indicate at the convention?
No, Trump will eat them. Scorpions in a bottle. The minute Vance does well, he's a dead man.
Unless
Unless
Vance eats him first.
We got
25th Amendment in like February of next year.
Yeah. Who knows this light schedule Trump's on? I'm starting to think of the cognitive issue is going to wheel around on him big time after the debate.
We got to go, but Mike, just give me Luther here, because and then we'll
Luther
Vandross
here. Luther Vandross listens to Hacks on Tap.
All right,
I think it's
Luther.
Lex
Here we
Luther,
go.
actually.
This is from Luther. He inventive guy. He nailed this question to the door at Hacks on Tap World Headquarters. Okay, clearly you guys, history. All right, Luther wants to know from David Axelrod. This is a completely unscientific metric. Well, that's never stopped X before. But who's winning the yard sign and bumper sticker war in the battleground states? Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been roaming around rural Michigan, and there are a lot of Trump signs, but I've been surprised to see some Harris signs as well. But I'll tell you something. I got a buddy, one of the smartest guys in politics, Saul Shore in Philly, does races all over the country, and he is obsessed with yard signs. And he thinks that yard signs not only are a sign of support, but also have a psychological impact when you're driving through your community and you see all of these yard signs. So he is absolutely obsessed by it, and he's in Pennsylvania. He'll be keeping an eye on that. We should keep an eye on it. And listeners who are sending their questions, and keep an eye out in your own communities and let us know what you see.
Send us pictures now that we're on YouTube. I don't believe the yard sign guff. All I ever do is geo-target where the candidate I'm against drives to the airport and put up 1,000 there, so they blow all their money on yard signs. So I'm very proud in '88 in the Hyler race, I invented the negative yard sign, which I believe.
Spoken like a true media man. More money for ads, less money for yard signs, and
yard
no
signs
time.
that can talk.
When I'm up here in the
Pine
Tree State in Maine, I like to take the measure of things by exactly this route. I go look at all the yard signs, and then I was told that every yard sign that I see in Central Maine is actually just all from Tucker Carlson's house. So I'm like, okay, that just skews the sample.
I will say this, having driven across the country yet again a couple of weeks ago from New Hampshire to Chicago to vote, and then home to LA, I did do a little yard sign counting, and my unscientific yard sign poll in rural New Hampshire, Trump signs down 50%, no Democratic sign. But the Trump stuff, the big 4x8's gone.
Well, they've apparently
Iowa,
indicated that their New Hampshire's done.
Not like 2020.
Anyway.
It's not like 2020.
It's not like 2020.
Yeah.
Same thing cutting through the Midwest.
Seriously.
Northern Ohio saw a couple in Iowa, saw a handmade Harris sign painted.
It was like this during the primary. There were Trump signs during the Republican primary in South
Question
Carolina,
is,
New Hampshire.
The question is whether the Trump campaign has adopted the Murphy theory and isn't pushing yard signs, but we'll see. It's a measure of something. We don't know what, but we do know we're out of time. Guys, you look terrific. Nobody's ever looked, as Trump would say, no one has ever seen anything like this on YouTube.
Sir, he came up to me. I had a tear in his eye as he looked at us. He thought,
Yes,
I'm not sure if it was
nobody's
a
ever seen anything. Yeah, yeah.
Never seen anything like this.
All right, guys. We'll see you next. See you next week. Going to be a big week.
Rod, Family Jewels Electric Charging couldn't resist. All right, we're seeing you guys.
See you guys. Show us his
next
actual
week.
Family Jewels.
Debate time, doubleheader.